Curious to discover which groundbreaking inventions from the past century shaped the world and then slipped away. Today we're showcasing 20 iconic creations that were once the talk of the town and epitomized modernity. As time marches on, certain inventions fall by the wayside. But why do some inventions endure while others fade? Let's find out. Imagine a time when the centerpiece of every living room was a bulky, boxy behemoth, the CRT TV. Coming into prominence in the 1950s, this technological marvel turned the humble living room into a bustling family theater. Picture the excitement as families gathered around to watch the moon landing or the latest episode of I Love Lucy. Despite its hefty frame, the CRT TV was the window to the world until the sleek and slender flat screens of the early 2000s gently nudged it into the annals of history. Yet, ask any vintage video game enthusiast, and they'll wax poetic about the unmatched charm of playing on a CRT. Before streaming in HD, the CRT TV was the family's bond, the newsbringer, and the entertainer, all rolled into one. Long before texting and swiping, there was the thrill of spinning a rotary dial or the sharp click of a push-button phone. Invented by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876, the landline phone was the cornerstone of communication. These phones were built like tanks, and hanging up with a slam was its own kind of satisfaction. As cell phones began to dominate in the late 20th century, the once ubiquitous landline started its slow retreat. Yet, in some homes, the landline lives on, a reminder of simpler, more connected times. Remember when phone numbers started with words? Call KL55555, a testament to a time when phone numbers were a jingle, not just a sequence. The VCR, a marvel that arrived in the 1970s, was akin to a magician in a box, granting us the power to capture time itself. Suddenly, TV schedules no longer dictated our lives. We could record, rewind, and relive our favorite moments at will. The VCR was the herald of home cinema, a concept so revolutionary that even its hefty price tag couldn't dampen its allure. It's a testament to its impact that phrases like "be kind, rewind" are etched in the collective memory of a generation. As DVDs and streaming services emerged, the VCR's star faded, but its legacy of shaping family movie nights and introducing the world to video rentals lives on. In the 1950s, music found its wings with the transistor radio, transforming beaches into personal concert venues where friends gathered, basking under the sun while top 40 tunes played, a soundtrack to youthful summers. This small device brought melodies and voices not just into homes, but into open spaces, making the world feel a touch smaller, fitting snugly into one's hand. Inventors like William Shockley gave us a tool that connected us to the outer world in a manner both intimate and expansive. The radio delivered music, news, and live sports with a static crackle, adding a layer of authenticity to every broadcast. Despite the digital age, radio's essence survives, transformed yet enduring, a testament to its role as the soundtrack of the 20th century. The typewriter, with its rhythmic tap-tap and the ceremonial ding at the end of a line, was the soul of written communication. From Mark Twain to the Beat Poets, it was the instrument of choice for crafting narratives. The introduction of electric models, like the IBM Selectric in the 20th century, was akin to moving from a horse-drawn carriage to a sleek automobile. Yet, the dawn of personal computing in the late 20th century gently ushered this stalwart into the shadows. Still, the typewriter remains a symbol of creativity and nostalgia, cherished by those who yearn for the tangible imprint of ink on paper. Once a beacon of connectivity, the payphone stood as a testament to public communication. Scattered across urban and rural landscapes, they offered a lifeline, a portal to distant voices. Indeed, finding a forgotten quarter in the coin return slot felt akin to winning the lottery, a small urban treasure hunt that could brighten any day. As cell phones became our constant companions, the need for these metal guardians waned, and they vanished from our streets. Yet, their iconic image lives on in movies and memories, a relic of a time when staying in touch meant a pocket full of coins and a booth around the corner. Before digital streaming platforms like Spotify, the audio cassette reigned supreme, offering a personal touch to music curation through the creation of mixtapes. Philips launched this innovative format in the 1960s, transforming cassettes into powerful means of expression beyond mere songs. Despite being overshadowed by CDs and MP3s, cassettes have seen a revival among those nostalgic for a tangible music experience. Mixtapes, meticulously assembled, symbolized affection and personal milestones, embodying the art of sharing music intimately. The ritual of rewinding tapes may have faded, but the essence of mixtapes endures, evoking a bygone era where music sharing was a thoughtful, personal gesture. Today, the audio cassette remains a beloved relic, celebrated for its role in crafting heartfelt musical narratives. In 1979, Sony unleashed a revolution that fit snugly into the pockets of a generation hungry for mobility: the Walkman. This wasn't just a device, it was a declaration of independence, allowing music to become a personal, portable experience. Suddenly, every walk to school, every bus ride, and every leisurely stroll had a soundtrack. The Walkman didn't just change how we listened to music, it changed where we listened, infusing the mundane with magic. As smartphones and streaming services emerged, the Walkman faded into the background, but not before it had indelibly changed our relationship with music. The legacy of the Walkman lives on in every smartphone's music app, a testament to the era when music first stepped out with us into the wide world. The floppy disk, a cornerstone of early personal computing, emerged in the late 1960s, symbolizing the first foray into portable digital storage. When the 3.5-inch floppy was introduced, many pondered, who would ever need that much storage? A notion that now elicits a chuckle in our gigabyte-saturated age. The act of inserting a floppy disk, accompanied by its characteristic click, defined an era of computing in the 80s and 90s. Despite its obsolescence due to advancing storage technologies, the floppy disk endures in the digital lexicon, immortalized as the universal save file icon. This subtle homage serves as a nostalgic reminder of the disk's pivotal role in the evolution of data storage and management. The Polaroid camera was magic encapsulated: a click, a whir, and moments later, a memory in your hand. Introduced in 1948, it brought instant gratification to photography, a novelty in an era of waiting and anticipation. It was the party favorite, the keeper of candid moments, long before instant became a standard expectation. As digital photography and smartphones transformed our capturing and sharing of moments, the Polaroid's prominence dimmed. Yet, in a twist of fate, the digital age's ephemera has revived a longing for the tangible, catapulting the Polaroid back into the limelight. Its resurgence speaks to our desire to hold on to moments, to make the fleeting a bit more permanent. The Polaroid camera, once a relic, now serves as a bridge between the past's charm and the present's pace, reminding us that some memories deserve more than just a digital footprint. The fax machine, once the pinnacle of office innovation, provided a bridge over the distance, transmitting documents with a buzz and a whir. Coming into widespread use in the 1980s, it symbolized efficiency and connectivity, long before emails became the norm. It's amusing to think that an entire generation now enters the workforce without experiencing the anticipatory pause as the paper slowly revealed its message. Yet, as the digital age dawned, the fax machine's relevance waned, its once urgent buzz now a novelty. Despite its decline in everyday use, it lingers in niches, a testament to technology's relentless march forward. The fax machine, in its heyday, was more than a device. It was a harbinger of the instant communication era, a stepping stone to the seamless connectivity we enjoy today. The boombox, a hefty symbol of the 80s music scene, carried more than just tunes. It carried an attitude. With its shoulder-perched silhouette, it declared music a communal experience, blaring the beats of hip-hop and rock into the streets and parks. Its arrival marked the democratization of music, pulling it out of living rooms and into public spaces. As personal listening devices became the norm, the boombox's prominence faded, but not its impact. Today, its spirit lives on in the portable Bluetooth speakers that soundtrack our picnics and beach outings. A nod to the era when music was not just heard, but felt, a tactile presence in the air around us. The 8-track tape, peaking in the 1970s, revolutionized music playback with its unique design, offering 4 programs for easier access to favorite songs and eliminating the need to flip sides. A standout feature was the innovative converter, allowing cassettes to play in 8-track players, a significant boon when cassettes emerged, and most still owned 8-track car players. Though surpassed by more compact formats, the 8-track's legacy of continuous play profoundly influences today's streaming experiences, ensuring its unforgettable mark on music history. Despite its descent into nostalgia, the 8-track's contributions to effortless and uninterrupted music enjoyment paved the way for the seamless listening standards we cherish today. Step into the past, where the glow of a jukebox illuminated faces in diners and bars, setting the soundtrack of countless memories. In the golden decades of the 50s and 60s, jukeboxes played the role of a communal music platform, where the drop of a coin could dictate the night's rhythm. These icons of music history created shared moments and collective memories, making music a journey navigated together, one selection at a time. Although the digital age has reshaped our listening habits, the essence of the jukebox endures in places that celebrate nostalgia, serving as a beacon of a time when music was a collective experience that united us in melody and moment. Imagine a time when music was a grand event, centered around a large, horned apparatus that seemed as much a piece of art as a music player. The gramophone, introduced in the late 19th century by Emil Berliner, transformed home entertainment by bringing recorded sound to the masses. This marvel of engineering spun its magic into homes, creating a culture of listening that laid the groundwork for all future music playback devices. The gramophone, once sidelined by sleeker music devices, finds its legacy in the vinyl comeback, echoing its rich sounds. This elegant pioneer remains a testament to technology's enduring magic, connecting past and present in music. In the 1980s, a time when technology and fashion collided in vibrant ways, the calculator watch became the epitome of geek chic. These wrist-worn gadgets allowed for on-the-go calculations, a novelty that seemed almost sci-fi at the time. Despite their practicality, the rise of smartphones with built-in calculators and a plethora of other functions rendered these nifty devices more nostalgic than necessary. Yet, they remain a cherished relic of a time when wearing your tech on your sleeve, or rather, your wrist, was the height of cool. Calculator watches, in their quirky glory, symbolize a period when technology was becoming personal, portable, and, yes, even a fashion statement. Enter the 1990s, and with it, the era of the Discman. Sony's portable CD player changed the game by offering music lovers a new level of sound quality and the novelty of skipping tracks with the push of a button. It was the soundtrack to countless commutes and the precursor to our modern, on-demand listening habits. But as MP3 players and streaming services emerged, offering vast libraries of music in compact, file-based formats, the Discman's reign came to an end. The transition from physical discs to digital files marked a pivotal moment in music consumption, pushing portability and convenience to new heights. Yet for a time, the Discman was the pinnacle of personal audio technology, a testament to the ever-evolving journey of music and its enthusiasts. Long before cloud storage and SSDs, magnetic tape was the unsung hero of data storage, quietly backing up the world's most critical information. From its inception in the early 20th century, it became a staple in computing environments for its reliability and capacity. Despite its less glamorous role, the evolution of digital storage solutions has not rendered tape obsolete. In fact, it remains a cost-effective, durable option for archival purposes, embodying the adage, "old but gold." Magnetic tape's resilience and continued use remind us that not all innovations need to be in the spotlight to make a profound impact on our technological landscape. The telegraph, a marvel of the 19th century, revolutionized long-distance communication by transmitting messages in Morse code over wires. Its invention by Samuel Morse in the 1830s marked the dawn of instant communication, shrinking the world in unprecedented ways. Though its prominence waned with the advent of the telephone and later digital communication, the telegraph's impact is undeniable. It laid the foundational principles for all modern electronic communication, proving that even the most seemingly outdated technologies have a lasting legacy. The telegraph's story is a testament to human ingenuity and our relentless pursuit to connect across distances, a pursuit that continues to drive technological advancements today. In the latter half of the 20th century, the portable television brought the magic of the small screen into more personal spaces, from kitchen countertops to camping trips. These compact devices offered a glimpse into the future of media consumption, where mobility and personalization would become key. However, as mobile devices and streaming services now deliver content directly to our fingertips, the portable television has become a quaint memory of early mobile entertainment. Despite its decline, the portable TV's legacy lives on in our current consumption habits, highlighting the enduring desire for entertainment on the go and the ever-blurring lines between public and private viewing experiences. One new thing that technology brings with it is the ability to view what you want when you want. But this was not the case with appointment television. Appointment television was the main source of consuming entertainment back in the day. People would save their personal hours at work, swap their shifts, or tell their kids, "Not now," all just to make time for their favorite and scheduled television program. In the 1960s, television channels had specific time slots that they would set shows in. A lot of the most popular television series like The Addams Family would occupy afternoon slots like 4 or 5 p.m. Kids also would have their own separate reigns on TV sets in households depending on the TV slot, changes Scooby-Dooby-Doo was prone to. Today you can just Google, Netflix, or YouTube whatever you would like, if not outright pirate it, so appointment television got really redundant. Still, there really was some charm to reserving a whole part of your day for a TV program. It gave it another kind of importance which we do not assign to shows now, because they are just something we can whip out anytime and pause at any time. What if you missed an important episode back then? You would be stuck with no way to see it and risk spoilers. Station wagons were a very vintage method of transportation that was built around 1910, but peaked much later towards the end of the 90s. In about 1976, they saw their highest sales ever as around 900,000 units sold each year. They made up about 10% of all vehicle sales in all of the United States of America. Plus, there was an incredible amount of customer choice back then due to the high demand. You had around 60 models on the market to choose from, so most households you would visit would have one parked. Station wagons were incredibly convenient for activities like going to the drive-in or spending a night out on the town with your friends. Spending dinner with your family or taking your children to the amusement park you finally promised them to. Anything and everything we do with a car, people back then usually did with these wagons. Now, the upper class still had their fancy cars and other vehicles, but this was a common ride for the common man. You may have, if you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, heard of the milkman. That was this unknown entity, known only for his association to milk and being known for having it. You see, our dear friend, the job of the milkman was milk deliveries, and that was a job our calcium-oriented friend took very seriously. In the same era as wagons, another odd trend that we would never see today since we get everything a person could ever want door-dashed, in the 1960s, around 29% of all people who bought milk had theirs delivered. That is a pretty substantial number. Vanished completely, and it seemed like it would not stay for long. People's suspicions were right when even that number halved in 2005 and people all over simply stopped opting for milk deliveries, though demand did rise during the pandemic. Something like getting your milk delivered being left behind is a societal leap that we can make sense of, but when did going to a theater for a movie's opening night get old? Seriously, all of the genre-defining releases and classics of the 90s and 80s would never get the same sold-out houses they received on their opening weekends. We are talking about classical films of all genres like Ghostbusters 2, Beverly Hills Cop, Rocky, Indiana Jones, and Batman. People used to go out in droves to these kinds of events. Young couples would book first-row tickets, and old couples would borrow back-seat ones, both hoping to make something special out of the night by going to the movies. Yet, today, unless a movie is a viral sensation like Barbenheimer or The Avengers, it seems like it does not get that kind of reception at all. Especially with sequels and franchises where knowing the background of a multi-title movie series and all the lore is important. Just about anyone shows up nowadays, but how did we go from $4.1 billion sold in tickets in 1946 to just barely over $800 million in the 2020s? That is a decline that doesn't make sense even given the almost century that has already passed. The simple truth is, people now can save their money on movies much easier. Feel uneasy about a film? Wait until it is out on the net, watch some of it, see IMDb reviews about it. People do not want to unknowingly waste money on going out to movies they might not enjoy. In the same way as viewing your favorite film in front of your eyes on the big screen is a thing of the past, so are kids selling door to door, awakening the entrepreneurial spirit of the neighborhood. Kids would go around saying things like, "My soccer team is selling some soda, do you want some too?" and make their afternoon lunch or save up for that special action in this kind of way. Boy Scout activities also may have included some door-to-door business on the down low. See, not only has what we view and the media we consume become really fast-paced, but so has the real estate market. In today's market, it is hard for a neighborhood to consistently be full of the same people. Even in 2023, over 109 million folks chose to rent their housing instead of purchasing. Big metropolises like New York live by that and die by it too. So how does that relate? Well, when your neighbor's paycheck to paycheck and rent to rent, you get less comfortable. People just do not feel so safe letting their kids out for those kinds of activities nowadays and believe that it is a high kidnapping risk. In 1976, the annual tally for cases was around 6,000 cars, which is frightening. In '84, it skyrocketed to $751,000. It has only kept increasing since, so it makes sense why parents are wary. Community cookbooks disappearing is another example of the sense of unity fading from modern-day America, as people used to have shelves filled with these. Community cookbooks were so common in the early 90s, and people would make them for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes they just felt like piling their recipes together, but sometimes it would be this really big celebration of some event. It could even be to raise money for charity, but most had easy-to-make home recipes that all kinds of families could love. People cherished their community cookbooks, and a lot of the most popular recipes ever came from these, some of the ones that even grandmas today are famous for. It was even a touching sentiment in families to hand the family copy of the community cookbook off to the newlyweds to set them off on their merry way. Again, though, something like that, while it is a great testament to human endeavor and how we are smarter together, it is pretty redundant in today's age. Nowadays, every store you pass takes cash or debit or even online payment apps, but back in the 20th century, carrying cash was very much common. Walk into an Atlanta restaurant and pay with a $100 bill today. You might get pulled out for illegal U.S. tender, but use that same bill in the olden days and you would get your change with a smile. Electronic transactions did not even become too common until the late 90s, and for big purchases especially, people would keep hunks of cash to really seal the deal. Even carrying petty cash around for day-to-day activities was really regular. There were only tens of thousands of ATMs in the mid-1980s in America, and some of these did not even work. Therefore, having $500 or $800 in your wallet seems like hindsight striking early. Of course, people were still at the same risk of being robbed, which is something they can now avoid with e-wallets and transactions. If you are watching this video on your off day from your university semester, then this is especially for you, because maybe the both of us have not realized how uncommon calling home weekly from college has become. People really used to save time both personal and on the telephone to call back to their family, especially on the weekends. Back then, it was either catch a plane or catch a flight, so visiting your family after you went to another state for your studies was not too easy. Plus, all people had to keep in touch with each other were calls and letters. When people said, "It has been so long since we saw you," they literally meant it, because folk would often go till the next Christmas to see their kids. In our daily life, we just swipe up on Insta, WhatsApp, or Zoom and start a video quality in 1080p with just a stable internet connection. Maybe that is why we may not be able to appreciate this as much as 80s kids, but think about it. How would you feel not being able to contact your family in any other way but from the telephone booth for moments at a time? It is a pretty unnerving thought, isn't it? Speaking of booths, the phone and calling people, did you ever hear about telephone party line systems? The very first of these came from as far back as 1878, but they really saw some use in the mid-20th century. These were basically telephone circuits that looped locally. They were set up this way so that a lot of people could subscribe to one circuit. Anyone within it could contact each other, so that was definitely one way of keeping up with neighborhood gossip. Ever hear about those communities or apartment complexes that pay for their water together? They tend to get it at a discount since they are buying in bulk, right? Same idea here. These lines were cheaper than your usual phone call and became pretty attractive to people. Think of it like a very primal version of Twitter, since it served the same purpose anyway, spreading the world's news around. Communication has drastically changed, but you have to give them credit. It was a pretty fun idea back then. Did you know those Sunday family dinners we always see in sitcoms like 2.5 Men or Modern Family were a pretty real American trend and cultural staple? For a lot of families, breaking bread together in the name of the Lord on the break of a Sunday dawn was tradition. It was almost like dinners were incomplete if you were having food separate from your family. It helped that back then, work weeks also allowed for the kind of spare time in which you could sit and have big family dinners. Even though the 44-hour work week was reduced to 40 hours in 1940 and has been the law ever since, only 42% of the overall labor force actually works 40-hour weeks. The rest get called in for overtime or shift schedules or emergencies, especially in the service sector. Next time you know why people tell you to talk to your waiters and counter people nicely. It's a harsh world out there, and some of us do not get to spend Sunday with our loved ones. Along with a growing sense of isolation due to today's overstimulating and busy world, people have begun to find that knowing your neighbor is an activity they do not have energy for. People are gradually becoming less and less interested in knowing who lives next to them, and remember how we talked about how much rent culture was growing? Why would you want to know your neighbors if they are young enough to be your kids or old enough to be your parents? Things like that make people think of hopping on social media for their daily dose of society instead of stepping outside and having a conversation with your fellow man. Maybe a lot of the safety risks of today would go down too if we fostered the same kind of importance towards community that there used to be. Since neither your neighbors nor your break times last too long these days, what benefit does continued commitment to one specific thing, place, person, or job get you? Today, lifetime employment just is not something people expect, neither when they are going in interviews nor when they are the ones conducting one. Most of the people that even have lifetime jobs are old workers who make up only around 1/3 of the jobs that currently are in the economy. But it used to be a pretty common dream to stick to a great job at one place, work until retirement, and enjoy your white picket fence down to the last beer. So what changed? The recession first of all led to so many layoffs. And mind you, this is what started the quick hire, quicker fire work culture of today, where you get 2 weeks to get your life together after being terminated. As the US economy struggled to come back, a lot of people became much more hesitant with lifetime job offers and stopped having it as a policy. Maybe we can see that kind of financial security come back sometime in our lives. Along with the privilege of earning your daily bread becoming a tad bit harder over the generations, things like town hall meetings, which were hallmarks of democracy, also kind of faded. Since it is the thing that a lot of the Constitution is largely based on, you would think that political and governmental trends like these would be an ageless thing. But nope. Today's kids get more likes replying to the politicians of their country on Facebook and Twitter than the politicians do making their own social media campaign posts. At least, that is how discontent gets virally expressed. Back then, you had these town hall meetings where people could go up to their government or their electives, directly, face-to-face and one-on-one speak with the people who are making institutional changes with their tax money. That is just a whole different vibe than talking to them through an app. You know, it really matters. It makes news, it makes headlines, and sometimes it even makes history. They did not have to take place in a town hall, but they had to be a platform where the common people could have a real, straight conversation with their government. Hold them accountable, ask why their roads have not been fixed, what is wrong with the plumbing, all that jazz. We would definitely like to see something so power to the people themed come back. You might remember us talking about telephone calls to your folks back at home a while ago to show how that and physical postcards and letters were the only way to get through. People were really big back then on writing handwritten letters or sending detailed postcards for Thanksgiving, Easter, and other holidays. It showed thoughtfulness and that you were thinking about the person, and they were not just a romantic gesture. Sending postcards was also a common practice amongst friends. Having a pen pal was quite common back then, and so it is no surprise this tradition was loved. Before the pandemic hit, around 2.28 billion cards were mailed most years, but in the heyday of letters, that number was easily over 3 billion. You can imagine how many people liked inking away their thoughts that had not found form nor audience for the longest of time. Then you were just a postage stamp and a few cents away from contact. Yes, the wait for a letter back was just as dramatic as it is in the films, in case you were wondering. To end the list with a set of pins and a bowling ball seems very American. But did you know that people used to pay for memberships in bowling teams? Yep, local or national leagues had their own subscription fees that members could pay to take a real part in the team and wreck some pins. Typical subscription fees would look like $20, $50 depending on the league, but they were a great way for the sport to spread. If you happened to have picked up an interest in bowling after you watched a game, or if you wanted to sharpen your skills up for a date, it was very accessible. You would be shocked to learn that there were about 11,500 bowling alleys in the 60s. That is a lot of real estate for one sport, if you ask us. One of the first examples we have of this phenomenon of the 30-something-year-old titans of yesterday fading away is Borders, which was the go-to bookstore for whatever piece of fiction you wanted to spend your winters with. Its first outlet came out in Ann Arbor in Michigan, and this was way before the rise of ebooks and PDFs, piracy, and audiobooks. We are talking about plain old-fashioned ink-to-paper books which you read along with snacks, tea, and a quiet, melancholic peace. Borders was the #1 enabler of people who loved living like this, and it enjoyed an incredibly long and undisputed reign until the recession hit and insolvency started looking like reality for the brand, not just a bad dream. It eventually decided to liquidate the stores it did have left across America, which numbered around 399. It lost to the rise of digital methods of consuming media and books, and it just got too big to manage. Hence, Borders had to shut down for good, becoming nothing more than a memory. Meanwhile, Pan American Airlines was one of the easiest and most convenient forms of interstate and international travel for Americans. During the recession especially, tickets would be pricey and people still needed to make it to their loved ones in time for national holidays. How would you keep a social life going without breaking the bank? Trains? Well, some of those rides can be awfully long. A car? And who pays for all that gas money? More importantly, who is driving that much? The answer was always a Pan American plane that would take you anywhere you liked without ripping a hole in your finances. Unfortunately, in the same fashion as Borders, poor management decisions like a very overpriced acquisition of national airlines would cripple it. The final nail in the coffin was probably the Lockerbie bombing, and your parents probably remember how harrowing Pan Am Flight 103 was. F.W. Woolworth probably started the entire trend of five and dime stores. At least, it was most definitely a pioneer of those outlets. It was even one of the most successful international businesses within the industry, and it set many trends and created a retail model that businesses still apply today. Well, if it was so successful, one will naturally get curious about what happened. Woolworth closed most of its stores in 1997. It had taken on an incredible amount of debts. The economy, both during the Depression and afterwards, was not kind to it, and it was declining in sales. The 2007-8 financial crisis is what truly crippled it, but the executives had renamed the business to the Venator Group and mostly abandoned the F.W. Woolworth brand as early as 1998. Speaking of how to get to your loved ones during holiday season and stores like Woolworth, where people did a lot of their shopping, one of the most highly visited stores year-round, especially during celebrations, would be Toys R Us. The nationwide heartthrob of children everywhere and the bane of your mom and dad's paycheck at the end of the month, Toys R Us was one of those parts of modern society that you do not realize how much you would miss as adulthood would kick in. Visiting a local outlet and spending as much money as you could, saving up for a new Lego set, buying train station setups, getting a new hoop with your dad for the backyard. These are all core memories of an American child growing up in the 20th century. Unfortunately, it could not compete with online shopping, and sales went down badly. Debts racked up, and the company filed for bankruptcy in September in the 90s. Nowadays, Toys R Us is not something the children of today know about. The exact same pipeline of drowning in debt to filing for bankruptcy would eventually claim the life of Blockbuster, another name that anyone who grew up back then remembers with the dearest of memories. Blockbuster was the go-to place to watch a movie, rent one out, and it had around 1,700 stores across the company. That's an extremely impressive milestone for a chain of rental stores. Yet they were so much more. They were the intro to your perfect Saturday night as you pulled up to a store to rent out your favorite movie, an experience that lots of young adults in its prime days would not forget. Blockbuster would not enjoy the spotlight forever, losing its sales as its customers moved onto online streaming and piracy, something that it just could not compete with. Along the way, they racked up around $1 billion in debt, which sealed their fate as the company shut down towards the start of the 2000s. In the same way as people enjoyed physical copies of their favorite movies and video games, people loved physical music and picking up their favorite albums on release day. One of the biggest pushers of this kind of business was Tower Records, as they were the hub of music in the 70s. At least music you could collect, touch, and put on your shelf to look at and brag about while your friends were over. They would play records in the store from artists both big and small, encouraging the local music scene. It was a big thing to get your work played at one of these stores. However, they suffered the same story as others who relied heavily on their USP being a real-life experience in terms of consuming your favorite media. You know, searching up an outlet, driving to one, picking out what you want, paying at the counter, rushing home excitedly, the whole 9 yards. Nowadays, you can Spotify, Shazam, and SoundCloud just about any music ever recorded in a booth, which made Tower Records pretty obsolete. In 2004, the company finally went bankrupt, unable to keep up with the times. Compaq was an information technology brand that came out around 1982. It had a lot of drive in terms of being one of the main players for developing computers and related products. Basically, it was the one-stop shop for all your tech-related problems. That made it a pretty popular choice among Americans, especially as a lot of the masses were still getting comfortable and familiar with technology, which was advancing at a rapid rate. They innovated quite a lot in the industry too, via accomplishments like making the first IBM PC-compatible computers and being the largest supplier of PC systems. This was before the time of Dell and HP, although it would later on get absorbed by HP and surpassed by Dell. Still, while it was there, this was all you needed for hardware and software both. Computers were not all that people wanted. A universally recognized brand, for that could be trusted and was accessible. Folk needed to drive to work after all. That is where Oldsmobile came in. And this one has roots as old as 1897. It made more than 35 million cars just in its Michigan factory. It was first a subsidiary of the larger company General Motors, but it was in competition with big names like Pontiac and Buick. Oldsmobile hit its absolute peak in 1983 when it would sell over 1 million cars annually, but a growing preference for imported luxury cars was something it found very difficult to rival. It was one of the oldest automobile brands in the world, but it could not stay that way for too long and went defunct in 2004 as it lost to more advanced cars. Howard Johnson's might have been known for its hotels, but it was also doing numbers as a restaurant chain. It had over 1,000 locations in the US, which, if you do not get how impressive that is, for reference, in the 80s McDonald's had around 1,600 outlets. To match a giant like that while also having a part-time career as an MVP in the hotel industry is a pretty impressive resume. It was extremely common in North and South America, and a lot of the people went specifically for their iconic ice cream, which they could not get enough of. Howard Deering Johnson first founded the chain in 1925, and by the 1950s, it was a large presence. While there is no one chronicled list of reasons as to why the restaurant chain, which was franchised separately, disappeared, it did start dwindling down around the 90s and early 2000s, with the last store closing down just a few years ago. If anything, it may be that fast food restaurants simply became too widespread to compete with. Sears was a retail giant that unfortunately made one too many bad investments and had to sell itself to a new owner. This new owner eventually moved the assets of Sears to their subsidiary Transform Co., which is when Sears closed down. But let's not talk about how it ended. Let's talk about how amazing the golden days of Sears really were. Clothing, car parts, general goods, tools, necessary things for your home, it became one of the most popular mail-order businesses. Sears had a chokehold on the department store scene in America during the 90s, and nobody can contest that, not with the mountain of evidence that proves that point, which is a simple Google search away. You know, if the memories of an entire generation were not enough evidence, we definitely would have liked to live in a Sears-heavy era and see the hype. We have spoken about computers, cars, and even general appliances, but what about photography? The urge to crystallize a moment forever? Who filled that void for Americans? Kodak and no one else. The first time 35mm film cartridges were used were because of Kodak. The first time film products were circulated in a mass market was because of Kodak. And the first time there was a massive rise in sales, interest, and engagement towards film photography was all because of Kodak. This was one of the most popular suppliers of film products and photography-related equipment, and if you were looking to start a hobby or a career, this was the place to go. We know that film photography does not stand up to the modern cameras of today or even 10-20 years ago, but it was still incredibly fun to do. Unfortunately, it was not fun enough to be sustainable, and due to the rise of digital cameras and photography, Kodak had experienced terrible sales, layoffs, and financial issues. It filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2012, and now is a bygone name. We are sure all of you remember Polaroid, and we are not talking about the modern aesthetic that dominates Twitter and Tumblr today, but the instant film company that let a lot of us express ourselves while making pretty memories stored in film. Polaroid is an incredibly nostalgic brand for a lot of young and middle-aged adults, and it was one of the dominant companies in the film industry. Things would stay this way for a long while, and their cameras are considered vintage collectible items today. It transformed photography as we knew it back then, so it makes sense that they have so much value. Unfortunately, the same could not be said of the company in the face of digitalization, which is what Kodak fell to as well. No matter how grainy the picture, how perfect the colors, or how handy the camera, it just could not beat a smartphone. For that reason, many film photography companies fell to irrelevance, and even Polaroid couldn't escape that. Pontiac was another one of General Motors' sides, along with Oldsmobiles, and they made some of the fanciest-looking cars of the 20th century. It was meant to go along with their luxury Oakland automobiles, but the cars saw so much success on their own that General Motors made a separate thing out of it. While it was discontinued 13 years ago, which, by the way, only happened because GM needed a bailout, and the government told them to cut costs in order to survive. So, Pontiac had to get axed. It was still an incredibly successful line of cars that any fanatic would love to get their hands on today too. Showbiz Pizza Place was both a hit pizza chain and the first thing that popped up in your head when you would think of how to have fun. This was because it specialized in giving you the kind of fun you had as a child with your favorite childhood food, which was a piping hot pizza pie. Arcade games, animatronic stage shows, and rides that worked on arcade coins, it was literally heaven if you were 12 years old with a free Friday and some allowance. Their pizza was also extremely good for the price, and it enjoyed a very strong run into the 90s. Sadly, it was locked in deadly competition with Chuck E. Cheese and eventually merged into them too, and the stores were rebranded. That marked the end of the Showbiz name, as good as it sounded. Burger Chef was one of the most popular hamburger joints in the American nation during the 1900s, and it came up with a simple but incredibly quality-focused menu that won many hearts. It focused itself on being this cheap brand that you could take the family out to for a great burger, shake, and fries, and when it introduced things like its Fun Meal, which later inspired the iconic Happy Meal, and its Super Chef Burger, it skyrocketed in the industry. People could not get enough of Burger Chef, and for good reason. Where else could you get a burger so good under $1? All in all, you only needed a couple to have a full-course meal. That sounds like a pretty good deal regardless of the era. Unfortunately, it got too ambitious and tried to expand more than it could handle, which eventually led to its downfall. Communal ration was probably the Burger Chef for dogs, but it was definitely a relief for dog owners across the nation. True to the name, when times of war and economic recession meant rationing was at an all-time high, Communal managed to pull through as a sustainable option that pet owners could keep going with without adding onto the bills too much. Ever heard the term Easy Fido used when calming down a dog? Yeah, Fido used to be a yellow dog that was on their labels, and they got their name from K-Ration, which was WW2-era canned food. It also sponsored local dog shows, so it had a lot of goodwill with the pet community. The brand was recently purchased by Gespa, but in its heyday, it was the only place to get affordable and reliable dog food at. Revco was a really popular drugstore brand that had to close down in 1988 when rising costs and inventory made staying in business pretty hard, leading to eventual bankruptcy. Despite the grim ending, before that, it was based in Ohio and was a successful multi-state chain. It even had stock up for trade in the New York Exchange, so you know it was really big league, a pretty nifty place to get your daily Panadol from, but now you can just get that sort of thing delivered. White Tower Hamburger was founded in 1926 in Wisconsin, and it had a similar taste to White Castle burgers, which were already pretty popular. While it was not as popular as Burger Chef or McDonald's or other huge names like that, it was still a pretty solid choice for a pleasant hamburger. The White Fortress heavy interior design and its menu led it to being a trusty choice for university students in particular. It was never too big of a brand, with about a modest 230 locations, but it was known for its sauces. Unfortunately, it slowly declined naturally instead of being uprooted by advancing tech or industry standards. Wicky's Furniture was this private furniture store and had around 43 stores in places like Michigan, Minnesota, California, Illinois, and Indiana. With an extremely comprehensive range of items and ready-to-fit furniture including full kitchens, this was the brand to shop with if you were planning a renovation, a move-in, or just had your eye on some interior design to make the abode a little less humble. Wicky's eventually got merged with Travis Perkins, and they started cutting a lot of corners with stores, shutting many of them down. Eventually, it parted ways with Perkins recently, in 2021, which marked the end of Wicky's. The last name on the list is Ben Franklin, which was another five-and-dime arts and crafts store that actually was mostly found in small towns. It came around in 1927 and had its prime in the 50s, 60s. You could buy mostly anything there, and it made for a great day spent shopping around with your friends or partner or family. Of course, for our more artistically inclined viewers, it was a good choice for getting your supplies too. Sadly, sometime in the 90s, it would declare bankruptcy like so many others on the list, although we are not quite sure why. They were having lower sales and were never really that prominent to begin with, but they were more of a local name that everyone became familiar with. Pretty nice to have a good arts and crafts store again, right? Back in the day, during the golden era of the 50s and 60s, soda fountains stood as the heart of American leisure, buzzing with life and the sweet aroma of syrup, where dreams shone as brightly as the countertops. These were the social theaters of everyday life, where rock and roll tunes set the stage for teenage dreams and family outings. Imagine a lively spot filled with laughter and treats like malted milkshakes and banana splits, all to the tune of a jukebox. Though fast food and changing tastes have overshadowed them, soda fountains, with their sense of community, nostalgia, and joy over simple pleasures like an ice cream soda, remain a cherished memory of simpler times. Deciding what to do with a book of S&H green stamps was a major decision. A new set of dishes? A toy guitar? This was a treasure hunt where the prize could be as grand as a new toaster or as whimsical as a garden gnome, all tucked away in the pages of a stamp book. It was a communal hobby, a shared endeavor that bridged generations, teaching lessons in patience and the joy of saving. Though the digital age has introduced more direct means of rewarding loyalty, the legacy of S&H green stamps endures, a testament to a time when loyalty was measured in stamps and rewards were a tangible slice of the American dream. Anyone remember watching The Pink Panther or the original Parent Trap from their car? Drive-in movies are a nostalgic symbol across all generations these days, but only boomers truly remember the experience in its golden age. Here, families and friends congregated under the starlit sky, their cars turned into private viewing booths where popcorn was passed hand to hand and movies were watched with a sense of freedom that indoor theaters couldn't match. These venues were communal spaces where memories were made, where the first notes of a love story could begin against the backdrop of a Hollywood ending. Though the advent of home entertainment has led to their decline, the romance of drive-in theaters endures, a sweet note of nostalgia in the digital age's symphony. If you remember the 1960s frenzy known as Beatlemania as a first-hand participant, you're definitely a boomer. The Beatles catapulted into global superstardom around 1963, and their then unprecedented fan base is still an icon of the era. It wasn't merely about the music, though the tunes were catchy enough to hum for days. It was about the moment, the feeling, the unbridled joy of being part of something larger than life. The Beatles, with their cheeky smiles and Liverpudlian lilt, were the Pied Pipers of a generation, leading legions of fans through the streets of new sonic landscapes. Their concerts were cathedrals of sound, where the air vibrated with the screams of fans and the promise of youth. Beatlemania changed the world, leaving a legacy of innovation and freedom that still echoes today. There was a time when television whispered goodnight with the strains of the national anthem, a patriotic lullaby that marked the end of the broadcast day. This tradition, steeped in a sense of national pride, was a daily ritual that united viewers, a shared moment of reflection in the glow of the TV screen. It was a reminder of shared values and common dreams, a closing note that spoke of unity and belonging in a vast and varied nation. As 24-hour programming dawned and the anthem faded from the airwaves, the memory of this tradition lingers, a symbol of a time when television was not just entertainment, but a communal hearth, where the nation could gather and be reminded of its shared identity and values. Even if boomers were too young to remember President Lyndon B. Johnson signing the act, which outlaws discrimination, they've probably experienced the effects of the changes in policy it brought about, like the integration of schools. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 stands as a towering milestone in the journey toward equality in America, a beacon of hope that illuminated the path forward. It was a declaration, loud and clear, that discrimination would no longer be tolerated under the law. This act was a victory, hard-won by the sweat and tears of countless individuals who dared to dream of a world where everyone had a seat at the table. Its passage was not just a political triumph, but a cultural shift, signaling the beginning of the end for the entrenched barriers of racism and segregation. While the journey towards equality continues, the Civil Rights Act remains a cornerstone. If you wanted to call a friend or a business, you had to flip through the phone book to find their number. Were you listed in the white pages? It was a catalog of lives, businesses, and services, a physical manifestation of the network that connected us all. Flipping through its pages was a tactile journey, a reminder of the interconnectedness that binds us. The decline of the phone book, hastened by the rise of the internet, marks the end of an era of tangible connections. Yet for those who remember its heft and scope, the phone book remains a symbol of a time when the world was at your fingertips, just a page turn away. In the heyday of analog photography, flash cubes stood as tiny beacons of innovation, illuminating the faces of the 60s and 70s with a burst of light and a click. These cubic wonders, with their single-use flashbulbs, transformed the average Joe into a moment-capturing maestro, banishing shadows and brightening smiles in living rooms and birthday parties alike. Flash cubes symbolize the democratization of photography, a step towards capturing life's fleeting moments without the need for a photography degree. Though their glory days were numbered, with technology marching on to sleeker, more integrated solutions, the era of flash cubes remains a nostalgic snapshot of a time when capturing memories required a physical flash of genius 4 times over. ABC's Wide World of Sports was some of the most sensational TV of its time, capturing the essence of sports in America with Evel Knievel's breathtaking stunts as a defining highlight. On February 5, 1976, viewers were glued to their screens as Knievel pulled off one of his legendary jumps, embodying the extreme of human spirit and daring. His motorcycle leaps were epic narratives of man versus the impossible, capturing the imaginations of viewers and inspiring a generation to reach for the stars, or at least jump over a bunch of cars. This show expanded the horizons of sports broadcasting, setting the stage for the future of sports entertainment. Oh, how far technology has come. Back in the day, electronic calculators were the hot tool that promised to make long division a thing of the past, though the original tool was a bit clunkier than today's sleek handheld calculators. The days of slide rules and penciled equations stretching across pages were gone. In their place stood a device that promised liberation from the numerical grind. These calculators transformed education, commerce, and daily life, making the esoteric realms of mathematics accessible to the masses. Their arrival marked a pivotal moment in the digital revolution, a leap towards a future where technology would become an extension of the human mind, forever altering our relationship with numbers. Debuting on NBC's Puppet Playhouse TV show in 1947, the Howdy Doody puppet soon after earned his own show. Howdy Doody, with his freckled face and eternal grin, was a pioneer of the airwaves, a marionette maestro who brought laughter and learning to the living rooms of post-war America. The show was a medley of entertainment and education, a place where children could gather around the television set as a community, learning the values of friendship and honesty. Howdy Doody was adored, his adventures and misadventures sparking imaginations and fostering a sense of belonging among his young audience. His legacy lives on, a testament to the power of storytelling and the enduring charm of a puppet who became a cultural icon. In the 60s, people were putting everything in Jell-O, and we do mean everything: ham, salmon, lamb, cottage cheese, fruit. The list goes on. Thankfully, that trend has faded. From savory salads suspended in lime gelatin to desserts dotted with marshmallows, Jell-O dishes were a staple of family gatherings and potlucks, a testament to an era's love affair with convenience and innovation. These creations, often colorful and occasionally confounding, captured the spirit of a time when the kitchen was a laboratory for exploring the new and the novel. The Jell-O era, marked by culinary curiosity, remains a distinct and explorative chapter in American food history. These kids' bikes were designed to look like a chopper, with the high handlebars, smaller wheels, and that classic banana seat. These bikes, emblematic of 60s and 70s childhood joy and adventure, were the vehicles of choice for explorers of suburban frontiers, the companions in quests for independence and the thrill of the ride. Riding a banana seat bike was an act of expression, a declaration of style and fun, evoking a sense of community and exploration. The legacy of these bikes rides on, a sweet reminder of a time when joy was found in the simple pleasure of a bike ride with friends under the wide open sky. Air travel has changed in so many ways, but baby boomers remember when it was common to see people smoking on airplanes. This era is a hazy memory from a time when the skies were a little less friendly to the lungs. The gradual extinguishing of smoking on flights marked a turning point in public health awareness and policy, a shift towards a clearer, cleaner flying experience. This transition mirrored a larger societal change, from acceptance to restriction of smoking in public spaces, highlighting evolving attitudes towards health and communal well-being. Today, the smoke-free cabin stands as a breath of fresh air, a testament to progress in the journey towards a healthier public sphere. Sure, the 2004 Disney movie Miracle gave younger generations a recap, but there was nothing like seeing the miracle on ice happen in real time as an adult. On February 22, 1980, the U.S. hockey team did the unthinkable by beating the then untouchable Soviet Union team in the semifinals at the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid. It was a David versus Goliath tale that transcended the rink, igniting a flame of national pride and unity in a time of uncertainty. This was a declaration, a moment of sheer euphoria that reverberated beyond sport. Clipping baseball cards to bike spokes transformed ordinary bicycles into roaring motorcycles of the imagination, a simple pleasure that encapsulated the essence of childhood ingenuity. It made the most satisfying noise when you rode down the street really fast. This pastime was a rite of passage, where the value of a card was measured not in dollars, but in decibels. The ritual of choosing which hero to sacrifice to the spokes was a testament to youthful priorities, a balance between admiration and the allure of acoustic horsepower. In this symphony of cardboard and rubber, a generation found joy, community, and the simple thrill of making their mark one ride at a time. Technically, these types of meals are still around today, but only certain people will remember when these were invented. The first Swanson brand TV dinners consisted of a Thanksgiving meal of turkey, cornbread dressing, frozen peas, and sweet potatoes. Those iconic trays of compartmentalized comfort food were the heralds of a new era in American dining, mirroring the post-war shift towards convenience and the burgeoning TV culture. The TV dinner was a cultural artifact, emblematic of changing family dynamics, the rise of consumer culture, and the quest for simplicity in the complexity of modern life. Despite nutritional critiques, TV dinners represent the evolving balance between convenience and home cooking. About 30% of milk was still delivered to homes in the 1960s. Prior to that, it was by far the most popular way for consumers to get their milk. This service, emblematic of a broader era of home delivery, fostered a sense of community and trust, turning transactions into interactions. The decline of the milkman mirrored broader shifts towards self-service and supermarket dominance, yet recent trends towards local and home-delivered goods suggest a nostalgic longing for the personal touch and convenience that the milkman represented. Before digital communication, telephone operators were key connectors, facilitating long-distance conversations through their expertise in navigating complex networks. Later generations probably have no idea that you use dial 0 and then talk to a real live person to direct your call. Their role was personal, a comforting presence in the impersonal expanse of the telephone network. The transition to automated systems marked a leap forward in efficiency, but also the end of an era defined by the warmth of human interaction. The golden age of arcades was a testament to the allure of pixelated adventures and the camaraderie found in these neon-lit temples of entertainment. These spaces, buzzing with the sound of coins dropping and high scores toppling, were communal hubs where friendships were forged over joysticks and rivalries were settled on the scoreboard. Classics like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong were cultural phenomena that bridged the gap between technology and entertainment, creating a shared vocabulary for a generation. The shift from arcades to home gaming ended an era, but the comeback of retro gaming and arcade bars shows a nostalgia for arcade camaraderie. Miss the simplicity of these 20th century inventions? If so, like this video, click subscribe, and stay tuned for more nostalgia trips.